Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to the Explainer, everyone. Today we are unpacking something absolutely crucial, a really fascinating topic, the Christian manner of justice. And we're zeroing in specifically on biblical principles of fairness. We're going to be looking at some ancient texts that offer profound, literally life-changing wisdom on how we should be treating each other every single day, whether you're working out in a field or sitting in a modern office building. To kick things off, we've all heard that classic saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? We use it all the time. But looking at the source material we're digging into today, that is actually not the standard for believers. Not at all. Rather than just copying the culture around them or, kind of blending in with society's baseline, believers are called to operate on a completely different, much higher moral plane. The idea is to live by godly principles no matter where you are or what the rest of the world happens to be doing. To break this all down, our explainer today is structured around three main areas of life, pulling from three distinct books of the Bible: protecting the vulnerable, integrity in the workplace, and true wealth and generosity. Starting off with our first pillar, protecting the vulnerable, with some really powerful lessons drawn from Deuteronomy chapter 24. So let's set the scene here in Deuteronomy. The Israelites are out in the plains of Moab, getting ready to finally enter the promised land. And Moses is giving them these absolutely foundational instructions about fair treatment, compassion, and how to build a truly just society from the ground up. A huge part of this centers on the word oppress. In this specific context, to oppress means to defraud, take advantage of, cheat, rob, or basically do wrong to a hired servant. The text gets really specific here. God commands employers not to oppress their workers by holding back their daily wages. Basically, if someone does the work for you, you can't cheat them out of their pay by making them wait. The rule was super simple. You pay them before the sun goes down. Now, what's really interesting about the text here is the nuanced difference between being poor and being needy. It's easy to mix them up, right? But being poor refers to someone who is humble, lowly, and suffering in a general state of poverty. Being needy, on the other hand, means someone is in a highly active, immediate state of want or begging. Now, obviously, those two can overlap, but they are distinct conditions. And the biblical command? Open your hands wide to both of them. It's about ensuring that those who lack basic resources get immediate justice and care. And caring for the vulnerable wasn't just some nice abstract thought. It was literally baked right into their economy, specifically in their agriculture. The source text outlines this amazing three-step margin of justice. Step 1 happens in the field, when they're cutting the harvest. Step 2 is at the olive tree, when beating the boughs. And step 3 is over in the vineyard, when gathering the grapes. In all three of these major industries, God explicitly told the Israelites to leave a margin. They weren't supposed to just greedily sweep up every last drop of profit for themselves. So instead of taking every single stalk of grain or grabbing every last grape off the vine, they were told to leave the extra. And why? Well, it was specifically for the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. This leftover margin wasn't just wasted product. Actually, it was a brilliantly designed, built-in justice system meant to feed and sustain those who just weren't physically strong enough or socially established enough to fend for themselves. The biblical command here is incredibly direct. It says, don't go again to fetch it, leave it. Basically, if you drop a sheaf of grain, let it go. If we translate this ancient farming law into a modern everyday maxim, it's pretty simple. Don't be greedy. Leave a little margin in your own life to bless someone else. Honestly, that might just look like buying a stranger a meal while you're out, or paying for the coffee of the person behind you in the drive-thru. Which leads us perfectly into our second section, integrity in the workplace, exploring lessons from Ephesians chapter 6. We're shifting gears from ancient farms to the modern office, so let me ask you a question. Who is your real boss? It's a pretty provocative question when you really stop and think about it. The Apostle Paul drops this radical teaching on the believers living in the Roman culture of Ephesus. He tells them that their true master in the workplace isn't their physical, earthly manager at all. It's actually Christ. So the crucial point here is all about understanding your motive. Why do you do what you do? Paul contrasts two totally different work ethics. The first is eye service, which means you're only working to be seen, to court favor, or just impress people. Like, you only pick up that piece of trash in the hallway because you know your supervisor happens to be watching. The alternative is heart service. This means working with complete sincerity, doing the job exceptionally well because you view yourself as a servant of Christ. Your actual day-to-day job performance literally becomes an act of spiritual integrity. Paul even tells the Ephesians to do their jobs with fear and trembling. Now hold on, let's clarify that real quick. Trembling does not mean being terrified of your middle manager. Rather, it represents this inward attitude of deep respect, true humility, and a carefulness to do the right thing on the job. It's about recognizing that you carry a heavy weight of accountability, realizing that you represent your faith the whole time you're on the clock. And that demands a really high standard of consistency. The speaker in our source hits the nail on the head with this kind of energy, saying, "Don't be early to check out, be early to get there." Listen, if you're bringing all that energy and dedication to your Sunday roles at church, you need to be just as faithful, if not more, on your Monday to Friday 9 to 5 job. Give them the full hours you were hired for. And that brings us right into our third and final section, True Wealth and Generosity, diving into lessons from 1 Timothy chapter 6. Here, Paul is talking directly to the wealthy folks living in the super affluent yet really divided city of Ephesus. And the speaker in our source makes this super interesting distinction right out of the gate between wealth and money. Wealth is about solid assets, things like land, gold, and oil. Money, on the other hand, is just cash. It's legal tender. But here's the kicker. Regardless of whether you have true wealth or just a whole lot of money, Paul warns that all earthly riches are completely uncertain. They are unstable. They can literally dry up or vanish in an instant. Because of that deep uncertainty, Paul tells Timothy to charge them that are rich in this world that they be not high-minded. Essentially, having a little more money or success than the next guy should never, ever lead to arrogance or pride. Why? Because God is the one who richly supplies all things for our enjoyment in the first place. Our trust should be completely placed in Him, not our bank accounts. So, instead of hoarding all that cash, the command is to be rich in good works. And what does that look like? Well, first, distribute, meaning you share your resources freely. Second, communicate, which in this context means to fellowship through giving and being truly liberal with your generosity. And third, simply do what is honorable. True wealth isn't about hoarding the whole shebang for yourself, it's about investing in people and actively lifting up your community. Let's move to our final section and see how all of this builds together. Principles into practice. Looking at justice in the modern world. To really bring this to life, our source speaker shares this fantastic personal story. He wanted to invest in the education of the kids in his community, right? So he promised them $20 of his own money for every A on their report cards and an extra 20 for straight A's. Well, no surprise, the youth absolutely took him up on it. He happily peeled off $900 to give to them. That is a brilliant, real-world example of what it means to actively be rich in good works and heavily invest in the next generation. He also shares a deeply moving story from a conference he attended. He noticed a woman frantically searching through her purse when the offering time came, and she realized she had absolutely nothing to give. Following this inward prompt, he discreetly slipped money into her purse. Later on, she broke down in tears and revealed that she hadn't even had gas money to make it home that night. Talk about a modern application. That is the direct equivalent of intentionally leaving a sheaf of wheat in the field so the vulnerable can glean exactly what they need. So that brings us to our final thought for this explainer, and it's a big one. How will you leave gleanings in your own life today? Whether it's showing absolute heart-level integrity at your 9 to 5, paying for a stranger's meal, or just treating everyone around you with deep respect, the Christian manner of justice is active. It requires us to generously share our margin. So here is my challenge to you. Find a way to intentionally leave some margin in your field today. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and we will catch you next time.